All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. And today we're diving straight into some pretty choppy waters. President Trump is back in office, and we're going to take a look at the day one actions.
Wow.
You know, those very first moves that a president makes when they get into office
Yeah.
that really signal, I think, their priorities
Yeah.
and, what direction they want to take things.
Exactly.
And we've got excerpts from his book, America is Back.
Okay.
And we're going to focus in.
Yeah.
Specifically on his goal to reshape the federal workforce. He signed a bunch of executive orders, which is pretty typical for a day one, really trying to hit the ground running and set that agenda. But one of these executive orders is particularly interesting because it seems to be aimed at really overhauling how the federal government works on like a very fundamental level.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to see how presidents use these executive orders as a way to kind of like immediately implement their agenda right out of the gate. And in this case, we see a pretty wide spectrum. We've got immigration study, pardons, international relations.
Yeah.
Even TikTok got caught in the crosshairs there.
Yeah, it's a real mixed bag. But
right.
I think what really stands out is this focus on the federal workforce.
Okay.
Because it's something that maybe doesn't always get as much attention as like, a big foreign policy announcement or something, but it can have huge implications.
Absolutely.
For how the government actually functions on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So the book lays out two main goals when it comes to this reshaping of the federal workforce.
Okay.
And the first one is shrinking it, reducing the size of the federal government. And the second one, he uses the phrase obliterating the deep state.
Okay.
So, pretty strong language.
Yeah. And that really taps into, I think, this tension that exists within government. You've got political appointees on the one hand who come and go with each administration. And then you've got these career officials, the people who provide this kind of institutional knowledge and expertise and ensure some level of continuity no matter who's in the White House.
Yeah, the people who keep the lights on, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
So when he talks about obliterating the deep state, it seems like he's really taking aim at that career bureaucracy.
Yeah, and playing on the suspicion that, these career officials might be working against a president's agenda or, not fully on board with their vision.
And that's where Schedule F comes in, this executive order that he issued back in 2020.
Right.
Can you break down for us what exactly Schedule F is?
Yeah, so essentially Schedule F, it stripped job protections from certain federal employees. And it really turned these career positions into political ones.
Okay.
So imagine you've got a scientist working for the EPA. Under Schedule F, their role could be reclassified. And suddenly they become much easier to hire or fire based on political alignment rather than just their scientific qualifications.
So it's not just about, whether they're doing a good job.
Right, yeah.
It's about whether their views align with the administration.
Exactly.
So how many people are we talking about here? How many federal employees?
Yeah.
Could potentially be affected by Schedule F?
Well, the book cites a figure of around 50,000.
50,000.
Which is, it's a significant portion, especially when you consider there are roughly 2.2 million civilian federal employees in total.
Wow. So essentially what you're saying is by turning these career positions into political ones, the administration could replace an entire layer of experienced government workers with people who are more aligned with their agenda.
That's the idea.
And what are the potential implications of that? I mean, is that going to make the government more efficient? Or is it going to lead to a loss of expertise and institutional knowledge?
Well, that's a huge question. And there are arguments on both sides. Some people would say that this will make the government more responsive to the will of the people because you've got people in these key positions who are aligned with the president's vision. Right.
But then you've got others who say, look, you're going to lose a lot of valuable experience. And that could really hinder the government's ability to function effectively.
Yeah, it's a bit like what happens in any company, right? When you have a major leadership change, there's that kind of nervousness about whether people's skills will still be valued, whether they'll fit in with the new direction. But imagine that on the scale of the entire federal government.
Right.
It's a pretty massive shift.
Absolutely. And it really gets to this fundamental debate about the role of expertise versus loyalty in government.
Right.
Should the priority be ensuring that the people in these positions are the most qualified? Or should it be about having people who are politically aligned?
So we have this potential for massive upheaval within the federal workforce, and it all ties back to this idea of obliterating the deep state. But what does that even mean in practice? I mean, is there really this shadowy network working against elected officials? Or is this more about consolidating power? Well, the concept of a deep state is often used to suggest this kind of hidden, unelected group that wields real power behind the scenes.
Right.
But the reality, of course, is far more complex. Career officials do have significant influence, but their role is primarily to ensure that government functions effectively, regardless of political shifts.
Okay, so to kind of sum this up, we have President Trump back in office.
Mm.
He's using these executive orders to signal a dramatic shift in how the federal government is going to operate. And this emphasis on reshaping the workforce, particularly through Schedule F, is raising really fundamental questions about the balance of power and expertise in government.
Exactly. And I think it goes back to those day one actions because it's not just about who gets hired or fired. It's about setting the tone for the entire administration. What message does it send when loyalty seems to be valued above experience? What are the long-term consequences for the effectiveness of government? These are the questions that we're going to see play out as we watch this presidency unfold.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so fascinating to watch. Because we don't know the answers yet.
Right.
And it could really go in a number of different directions.
Right.
So this deep dive, I think, has been a real eye-opener. It seems like we've only scratched the surface here. What are your thoughts? What stands out to you about all of this? How do you see these changes potentially playing out? We want to hear from you. Let us know your thoughts. And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.